For decades, the story of human origins has been neat and tidy. We are apes. We share a direct lineage and a behavioral baseline with chimpanzees, gradually stepping out of the forests and onto the plains. But this strict primate model hits a wall when you look closely at our physiology. Humans possess an entire suite of physical traits, completely missing from the rest of the primate family tree. We lack a thick coat of protective fur, and instead we carry heavy layers of subcutaneous fat right beneath our skin. And the physical anomalies keep piling up. We shed visible tears when we experience emotional distress. We suffer from devastating cholesterol-driven heart attacks. We even have a naturally high physiological tolerance for metabolizing alcohol. None of these traits exist in the chimpanzee. If you look at the human organism solely as a primate, you have to ignore these massive physiological blind spots. Our bodies are full of biological hardware that simply doesn't belong in the ape lineage. This biological vacuum led geneticist Dr. Eugene McCarthy to propose a deeply controversial alternative called the hybrid hypothesis. McCarthy argues that the human lineage did not branch off cleanly. Instead, he points to an ancient, punctuated hybridization event, a genetic fusion between a female chimpanzee and a male pig, specifically the wild boar, Sus scrofa. If we provisionally accept this biological mosaic, human behavior begins to look like a clashing synergy of two distinct strategies: the arboreal, visual hierarchy of the primate, and the terrestrial, tactile gregariousness of the pig. Let's look at the first system. The primate mind is built for the canopy. It is highly visual and intensely hierarchical. Chimpanzees secure their status and build social bonds through grooming, a highly transactional, active process used to curry favor with superiors or calm aggressive rivals. The porcine mind is adapted for the forest floor. It relies heavily on scent and sound. Because pigs lack thick hair, their social structure is driven by thermoregulation. They bond through passive, whole-body physical contact, literally piling on top of each other to share heat. When humans express affection, we rarely pick through each other's hair. We hug each other, we snuggle closely, we crave sleeping near our partners. This deep psychological need for static, full-body contact closely aligns with the pig's thermoregulatory drive to huddle, diverging sharply from the active grooming of apes. In biological terms, this is called social buffering, a mechanism where the mere physical presence of a companion measurably lowers physiological stress. An anxious pig, just like an anxious human, is calmed by warmth and proximity. What we elevate in poetry as brotherly love has roots in cold biological necessity. It is a survival strategy inherited from a terrestrial herd animal, perfectly adapted to soothe the constant political anxieties of our primate brains. This synthesis extends to how we communicate. Chimpanzees rely primarily on body language and facial expressions, while pigs use a rich vocabulary of varied grunts and squeals to convey emotion. Human speech relies on the primate capacity for symbolic thought, but it executes that thought by hijacking the highly varied, tone-sensitive vocal apparatus of the pig. The primate provides a cognitive focus on facial signaling.
When high-intensity primate emotions trigger this terrestrial drainage system, it creates a vision-blurring sign of vulnerability that serves as an honest signal of trust. This animated diagram illustrates the metabolic constraints of brain size. Neurological tissue requires massive amounts of calories to function. A lean arboreal primate simply cannot carry the heavy energy reserves required to fuel such an expensive organ. The intellectual leaps of humanity only became biologically possible because we inherited a massive fuel tank. The pig's unique physiological capacity to build thick layers of subcutaneous fat acts as the metabolic engine for our primate intellect. But running primate software on porcine hardware creates serious system bugs. We share specific, dangerous health vulnerabilities with the pig, most notably an endless capacity to gorge on calories and a high susceptibility to clogged arteries. We also share a severe vulnerability to alcoholism. Unlike most mammals, both humans and pigs will voluntarily consume high amounts of ethanol, and both process it through identical metabolic elimination rates in the liver. A wild boar survives by scavenging fermenting fruit and calorie-dense tubers off the forest floor. When you install that aggressive terrestrial reward pathway, a brain wired to eat everything it finds, and remove the natural satiety breaks found in primates, you get the human-addicted personality. The modern epidemics of obesity and substance addiction are often framed as personal moral failings. In reality, they are inevitable system crashes, the result of our hybrid biology operating in a modern world of endless, calorie-rich abundance. If you mention McCarthy's theory in public, the reaction is almost always visceral revulsion. People hate the idea of being related to a pig. We associate them with filth and greed. This intense rejection is a psychological defense mechanism known as the Frankenstein complex. We look at the pig and fall into an uncanny valley, unsettled by the sparse hair, the thick fat, and the lightly pigmented eyes that look far too human. The human condition is defined by a constant internal war. We are torn between the Apollonian drive of the primate, obsessed with hierarchy, climbing, and dominating our environment, and the Dionysian drive of the pig, pulling us towards physical comfort, heavy consumption, and deep social huddling. Our deep cultural disdain for the swine is largely self-loathing. We project our disgust onto the animal because it represents the messy, chaotic, bodily appetites we constantly try to suppress with our cold primate intellect. Mainstream genetics strongly rejects the idea of a chimp-pig hybrid, arguing that millions of years of divergence make such a cross impossible. But whether you view the hybrid hypothesis as literal biological truth or a thought experiment, it provides a remarkably coherent map for our deepest contradictions. Our capacity for physically comforting empathy, our universal love for vocal music, and our hopelessly self-destructive appetites simply do not make sense if you only look at the apes in the canopy. Understanding the human condition requires looking as much to the forest floor as to the canopy. We find the roots of our humanity in the mud our mothers wallowed in, just as fiercely as the trees our fathers swung from.